The courtroom is full. The air is thick with tension, each sound echoing off the walls. Footsteps, the soft rustling of papers, the anxious shuffling of the crowd. You wouldn't think much of it at first. A courtroom is meant to be a place of justice, of fairness, where truth prevails and the law is blind. But today, something different hangs in the air. Something that will change the course of this case, and everyone involved. There, in the center, stands Lena Walker. Her back straight, her gaze unwavering, but her expression betrays nothing. She stands in front of a row of people, judges, lawyers, court officers, yet she is not here for a normal trial. Today, she faces the very system she has worked so hard to be a part of, and it's not for a case she is presiding over. Today, Lena is the victim. A cop, Officer Clark, stands before her, eyes full of judgment, contempt, and a desire to humiliate. He is about to perform an act that will send shockwaves through this entire courthouse. He steps toward her, his movements deliberate, slow, the kind of confidence only a person with unchecked power could have. His hand goes to the clippers, and in a flash he pulls them out. With one sharp motion, the buzzing sound fills the room. He shaves her head. The room falls silent. The sight of her head being shaved in front of everyone, stripped of her dignity, her identity, unfolds in slow motion. The sound of the clippers against her hair is deafening. It's a violent act of domination, designed to make her feel small, to remind her that she's nothing in the eyes of those in power. But it's more than just a shave. It's an assault on her very existence. She stands there, unflinching, the hum of the clippers the only sound that fills the space. But it isn't just about the physical act. The psychological weight of it is unbearable. Officer Clark watches her with a look of satisfaction, as though this moment will break her. But Lena? She remains still, her eyes forward, her face betraying nothing. How could he not know? How could he not see who she is? The woman he's humiliating isn't just a victim. She's a woman who has fought every single day of her life to get to where she is. She's a woman who has earned her place here. And as he finishes the last cut, leaving her with a shaved head, it's clear that he has made the worst mistake of his life. As the last strands of hair fall to the floor, Officer Clark steps back, satisfied. He stands there for a moment, watching Lena. He expects her to break, to cry, to retaliate. But nothing. The silence in the room is heavy. Everyone holds their breath, wondering what comes next. The onlookers, the bailiffs, and the security officers all watch in stunned silence. The cop's arrogance is about to cost him everything. You're not just any woman, are you? One of the court officers asks hesitantly. You should be ashamed of yourself, another mutters, as though they too have realized the magnitude of what has just transpired. The officer turns back to her, his face smug, his judgment clear. He opens his mouth to speak, ready to throw out some form of final insult, ready to watch her crumble before him. But before he can, she speaks. I am the judge, she says, her voice calm and firm, cutting through the heavy air like a blade. The words hang in the air for a moment, and then the cop freezes. His eyes widen. The weight of her statement crashes over him like a tidal wave. 5 minutes ago, he had no idea who she was. He had looked at her and saw a black woman, a woman he could humiliate, a woman whose presence was nothing more than an inconvenience to him. But now, he sees her for who she truly is. Lena Walker, the judge. A moment ago, he had all the power. Now it's all gone. The cop stands there, motionless, the expression on his face shifting from smugness to disbelief. It's as though the floor beneath him is about to crack open and swallow him whole. His grip on the clippers falters. He swallows hard, trying to process what has just been revealed. His eyes dart from Lena's unshaken face to the faces of those around her, all of them staring at him in silent judgment. How could he not know? How could he, a man sworn to uphold the law, not recognize the very person standing in front of him? You don't know what you just done, do you? Lena says again, her voice barely above a whisper, but powerful enough to shake the foundations of the room. The room is still. The tension is unbearable. Officer Clark's mind races. What's he supposed to do now? How does he undo the damage he's caused? But the damage can't be undone. The humiliating act he's just committed is now irreversible. And in those few seconds, he learns an unforgiving truth. In this room, he is not in control. He opens his mouth again, but no sound comes out. He looks from Lena to the crowd, to his fellow officers, but all he sees are eyes filled with judgment. Eyes that see past his badge, past his uniform, straight into the shameful soul beneath. Lena stands tall, her posture unwavering, but her face reveals nothing. She's not surprised, not shocked. She knew the moment he laid his hands on her, this would happen. And now, the ball is in her court. But this is just the beginning. 5 minutes ago, Officer Clark thought he had power. Now Lena Walker has it all. But the world doesn't stop for anyone. Not for Lena, not for Officer Clark. The ripples of this moment will spread far and wide, changing lives, altering careers, and challenging a broken system. Lena may have exposed the cops' racism, but the fight is just beginning. Because this isn't just about one cop or one act of injustice. This is about something much bigger, something that has been festering for years. The system, the law, and everything built on it is at stake. Will she get the justice she deserves? Or will the system she fought so hard to be a part of tear her down? 2. Lena Walker had spent her entire life breaking barriers. She was no stranger to struggle. Growing up as a young black woman in a world that continuously told her no, Lena learned early on that success was never handed out freely. It had to be fought for. Her childhood wasn't filled with typical dreams of fairy tale endings. It was filled with the quiet determination of a girl who knew the odds stacked against her. Lena knew that the path to becoming a judge in a deeply entrenched, racially biased legal system would require not just talent and perseverance, but a strength that most people would never understand. But as she sat there in the courthouse, head freshly shaved, a symbol of her personal battle, Lena began to wonder if the very thing she had worked so hard for, her career, her status, her identity, was now being used against her. What was it all for? The years of hard work, the long nights studying case law, the endless sacrifices made by her family, and the weight of her history in that courtroom. Could it all be undone in a single moment? Her head buzzed with thoughts as she stared ahead, unwilling to show even the smallest hint of emotion. Was she a symbol of something greater, or had she simply become another victim of the very system she had spent her life climbing? This wasn't the first time Lena had faced racism. In fact, it was a constant presence, lurking in the shadows of every room she entered, from law school to the courtroom. She had learned early on that in spaces where power is held, you're rarely seen for who you truly are. She was often underestimated, dismissed, or worse, treated as if her accomplishments were mere flukes, as if she had not worked 10 times harder than her peers just to prove she belonged. Lena could recite the microaggressions, the sideways glances, the subtle ways people tried to make her feel small. They were a constant hum in the background, never quite loud enough to ignore, but always there. Lena's heart beat with a quiet rage as she reflected on all the times she had been told, "You're not like the others," or "You're so articulate." The backhanded compliments, the assumptions about her intelligence, her ambitions, her worth. These were the invisible shackles she wore every day, holding her back from being fully seen. But what happened in the courtroom today felt different. It wasn't just another encounter with racial injustice. This was something far deeper, far more personal. The act of shaving her head, stripping her of her identity and dignity in front of everyone, felt like an attack on everything she had fought for. It was a visceral reminder that no matter how much she achieved, she would always be othered, never truly part of the system, never truly accepted by those in power. Lena wasn't alone in her fight. Her father, a prominent lawyer, had always been her biggest supporter. But lately, the tension between them had been growing. There were subtle differences in how they viewed the system they both worked within. He had always believed in the idea of gradual change, of moving through the system to fix it from within. Lena, however, had grown increasingly frustrated with the slow pace of reform. She had learned that sometimes the system wasn't broken, it was designed to keep people like her out. Her father's advice had always been the same. Lena, you have to play by their rules. But over the years, Lena had started questioning whether those rules were worth playing by. Could she make the system work for her without compromising herself? Or had the system already decided what role she would play in it? The gulf between Lena and her father grew wider with every passing day. She respected him. He was one of the few people she knew who had made it to the top despite the odds. But now, as she sat in that courtroom, humiliated and stripped of her dignity, she wondered if his slow, steady approach had been the right one. Was she wrong to push for faster change? Was it time to stop playing by their rules and start making her own? As Lena sat there, the weight of the moment settled in. This wasn't just about the physical act of humiliation anymore. It was about something much deeper. This was the reckoning. The moment that would force her to decide if the fight for justice would continue at the pace of the system, or if she would take matters into her own hands. Lena's thoughts raced as she sat, motionless, in the courtroom. Why had she been targeted so publicly? What was it about her that made them feel so entitled to strip her of her dignity? Was it because she was a woman? Was it because she was black? Or was it simply because, in a place of power, she was the exception, not the rule? The questions kept coming, each one more suffocating than the last. How could she fight a system that didn't even see her as an equal? How many times would she have to prove herself before people stopped looking at her like she didn't belong? Her father had always told her that power comes through patience, that change takes time. But was this the kind of fight that could be won with patience? Or did she need to take more drastic action, something that would expose the corruption and injustice she had been quietly navigating for years? Lena's gaze remained fixed ahead, but her mind was a storm of thoughts and questions. She had worked so hard to become a judge, to reach the pinnacle of a profession where people could see her for who she truly was, not as an anomaly, but as someone worthy of respect. But now she was a symbol of something much darker. She was a symbol of all the black women who had been subjected to humiliation, injustice, and violence, whose stories never made the headlines. But it was in that moment that something inside Lena shifted. She wasn't going to let this be her legacy. She wasn't going to be the woman who simply took the abuse and went on with her life. No, today, she was going to fight back in a way that no one expected. But she couldn't do it alone. The days after the incident were a blur. The media exploded with coverage, but the narrative being spun was not what Lena expected. Headlines called it a disruption in the courthouse. Some questioned whether Lena's reaction had been too harsh, too emotional. The very people who were supposed to support her now questioned her strength and resolve. And in the midst of all this chaos, Lena was left to wonder, was this just a case of an individual cop abusing his power, or was there a larger conspiracy at play? Had the system truly been designed to protect those like Officer Clark while silencing voices like hers? What would the consequences be for her family, for the entire community if she pursued this fight? Before we continue this emotional roller coaster, I want to hear from you. Are you watching from a place where these kinds of injustices happen too often? Do you believe the system can truly change, or are we stuck in an endless cycle? I want you to take a moment, drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from, and share your thoughts on what Lena is facing. Do you think she's right to stand up for herself? Or should she have handled things differently? Also, if this story is moving you as much as it's moving me, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an important update from this ongoing fight for justice. And hey, if you think this story needs to be heard by more people, share this video with your friends. Let's get this conversation going and bring more awareness to the fight for racial justice and equality. The questions continued to swirl in Lena's mind. Every moment she spent reflecting on what happened, the more determined she became. This was not going to be the end of her story. No, this was just the beginning. And whatever the outcome, she knew one thing for sure. She had to take action. But would the system allow her to win? Would the people around her, her family, her colleagues, the media stand by her? Or would they turn their backs when the battle got too tough? One thing was certain. In a world built on silence and complicity, Lena was about to make some noise. But what happens next? Will Lena take the risk and expose the entire system, or will she be forced to play by their rules? Can one woman, with the power of the law behind her, truly fight a system built to silence her? We're just getting started. The courtroom is eerily quiet now, save for the soft clack of the gavel, the shuffle of papers, and the occasional whisper from the crowd. But for Lena, the world feels as though it's closing in. Officer Clark, standing there before her, radiates a smug sense of superiority. His uniform, crisp and commanding, seems like a shield. His posture, stiff with authority, exudes a confidence that borders on arrogance. But in reality, it is his mask, a mask that hides the insecurity, the deep-rooted prejudice festering beneath the surface. She's not just a woman sitting at the mercy of the system anymore. No, today, Lena is standing at the precipice of a battle she never asked for. And Officer Clark? He's about to realize that the power he thinks he has over her is an illusion, one that will shatter in the very moment he chooses to assert it. Lena stands in front of him, unshaken. The room is filled with the weight of the stares from everyone around her, but she is fixed on the man in front of her. His eyes flicker, scanning her with that all-too-familiar judgment, one that makes her skin crawl. There's something about the way he looks at her, something that makes it clear that for him, this is not just about power or authority. For him, this is personal. It begins subtly. A glance here, a dismissive scoff there. Officer Clark, believing his authority is unchallenged, starts to make small gestures, little movements that chip away at Lena's dignity. He stands too close to her, invading her space. He reaches out in ways that are unnecessarily aggressive, brushing his hand across the table in a manner that's meant to intimidate. He moves with purpose, his steps deliberate, as if to remind everyone in the room that he's in control. Lena doesn't flinch. His words come next. Not loud, but sharp, each one designed to cut. The questions he asks, the tone in his voice, are dripping with condescension. It's clear to anyone paying attention that Lena is nothing more than a target to him. A woman, a black woman. He doesn't care that she's a judge. In his eyes, she's simply someone who doesn't belong in this space. Do you even know what you're doing here? He asks, almost mockingly, his eyes narrowing as if daring her to answer. This is a courtroom, a place for real authority. Lena's gaze doesn't waver. She stands her ground, her silence echoing louder than any word she could say. She's heard these kinds of things all her life, people questioning her, doubting her, trying to undermine her at every turn. But today it's different. Each passing second feels like an eternity. The room seems to shrink around them as Lena's emotions begin to rise. Anger, frustration, determination, and even disbelief. She had trained for this. She had prepared for the kinds of challenges that came with her position, but she hadn't expected this. The way Officer Clark's voice rises slightly, the arrogance in his tone, the way he moves to tower over her, it's all too familiar. It's the behavior of someone who's used to having power over others. It's the behavior of someone who has never had to question the system, who has never been forced to see the cracks in the foundation. Lena's heartbeat quickens, but her expression stays calm. It's the calm of someone who knows that this moment is not just about one officer, one interaction. This is about every single moment she's had to fight for recognition. Every moment she's been forced to prove her worth. Every single instance where her humanity has been questioned because of the color of her skin. As the tension thickens, something inside Lena shifts. This moment is too big. She knows that she can't allow Officer Clark to walk away, thinking he's gotten away with this. Thinking that he can continue to degrade and humiliate her without facing the consequences. She can feel the weight of everyone in the room, the quiet anticipation hanging in the air, but she knows something that none of them do. This is her moment. And it's time for the tables to turn. She leans forward slightly, her eyes narrowing, her voice finally breaking the silence with a force that demands to be heard. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she says, her voice calm but firm, too firm. The room seems to hold its breath, unsure of what's coming next. For a moment, Officer Clark falters. There's a slight hesitation in his posture, as though the words themselves have struck him. He blinks, as though trying to decipher what he's just heard. But he doesn't back down. Instead, he presses harder, his next words a deliberate attempt to reassert his control. "I know exactly who you are," he sneers, his face twisted with arrogance. "Just another person trying to disrupt the order of things. But you're not going to change anything." Lena's eyes lock onto his, her gaze unwavering. In the silence that follows, the camera focuses on her face, her expression resolute, determined, unyielding. And then, with the calmest certainty, she delivers the final blow that will change everything. "I'm the judge here," she says simply, the words cutting through the air like a blade. For a split second, everything in the courtroom comes to a standstill. The noise from the outside world, the murmur of the crowd, the shuffle of papers fades into nothing. All that's left is the stunned silence between Lena and Officer Clark. The cop freezes. His mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. His eyes widen in disbelief. His posture shifts from one of arrogance to shock, and the room is suffused with a sense of tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. In those few seconds, Lena has not only reasserted control over the situation, but she has also completely shifted the power dynamic. The officer stares at her, his mind racing to process what just happened. His hand shakes slightly as he lowers the clippers, the symbol of his previous power now meaningless in his grasp. How could he have missed this? How could he not have realized who she was? In the chaos of his racist rage, he never stopped to think. Never even considered the idea that this woman, standing in front of him, wasn't just another target. She was his equal. She was, in fact, more than that. She was his superior. Lena holds his gaze, and for the first time, the room begins to shift. The power in the space is now hers. The camera lingers on her expression, capturing every nuance. The slight narrowing of her eyes, the clench of her jaw, the resolve that has built up inside her over the years. Lena isn't just standing up for herself now. She's standing up for every black person who's ever been oppressed by the system, every woman who's been overlooked, every person who's been degraded in a space they rightfully belong. For Officer Clark, the realization is nothing short of devastating. He has been exposed for what he truly is, a man who hides behind his badge, believing he has control, believing his racism can go unchecked. But in this moment, he is powerless. Lena knows what happens next. She knows the consequences of standing up in a system built to hold her down. But she's ready. And as the tension fills the room, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The fight is no longer hers alone. It is now a fight for everyone who has ever been silenced, for everyone who has ever had their dignity stripped away. But what will happen next? Will Officer Clark accept the truth, or will he continue to resist? How far will Lena be willing to push in the face of such an overwhelming system? And as the fight for justice escalates, will it be enough to change the course of history? The battle has just begun, but what will it cost her? The news of Lena Walker's humiliation in court spreads like wildfire. Within hours, headlines flood the internet, TV stations, and social media, with mixed reactions from every corner of the country. The incident, which once felt like an isolated event, is now a symbol of something much larger, something that cuts to the very heart of systemic racism and the brokenness of the legal system. Lena's phone begins to ring incessantly. She doesn't need to look at the caller ID to know who's on the other side of the line. Activists, journalists, legal analysts, even politicians, all of them clamoring to get their say. Some are angry, demanding justice for the brutal act against her. Others are skeptical, questioning whether Lena should have acted differently, asking if her actions would jeopardize her career. The debate is fierce, and it's growing by the second. As the media frenzy builds, Lena can't help but feel like she's standing on the edge of a precipice. The deeper she digs into the incident, the more she realizes that this isn't just about her personal humiliation. This is about something much bigger. This is about the very foundation of a system designed to break people like her. Legal experts are quick to weigh in on the case. their opinions filling up every corner of the media. Some argue that Lena's actions were justified, that no one, especially not a law enforcement officer, has the right to strip a person of their dignity in such a blatant display of racism. But others are quick to criticize her, calling her reaction too emotional, too personal, too unprofessional for someone of her position. This isn't just a case of police misconduct, one legal analyst argues on TV. This is a judge losing control. She should have handled this with more restraint. But others, like civil rights lawyers, are quick to challenge this perspective. For too long, people of color, particularly black women, have been subjected to these kinds of indignities. Lena's actions were not only justified, they were necessary. A prominent activist says, her words echoing with a deep sense of urgency. And so the debate rages on. Lena watches the debate unfold from the safety of her home. The phone calls, the messages, the media, everything is coming at her so fast, so overwhelmingly. But the most painful conversations are the ones she has in private. Conversations with her father, her closest ally, the one person who has always had her back. Her father, a prominent lawyer in his own right, has never shied away from conflict. He's fought tooth and nail for his place in the legal world. But now, Lena senses a shift in him, a reluctance. He's been advising her to back off, to let the legal process take its course, to not escalate the situation any further. Lena, don't make this bigger than it already is, he tells her one evening, his voice filled with concern. This is dangerous ground. You've worked too hard to get where you are. Don't let one incident destroy everything. Lena listens to her father, but inside, something doesn't sit right. She knows he's scared for her, but she's also scared that if she doesn't act now, if she doesn't take this fight all the way, this moment will fade into nothing. She can feel the weight of history pressing down on her. Every black woman who has ever been silenced, every voice that has ever been ignored, is crying out to her. And as much as she loves and respects her father, Lena knows this fight isn't just about her career. It's not about protecting her position in the system. It's about changing the system entirely. As Lena's battle becomes more public, the scrutiny intensifies. Friends and colleagues begin to turn away, unwilling to take a side in a situation that could tarnish their reputations. Even some of Lena's closest allies in the legal community begin to distance themselves, whispering behind closed doors that perhaps Lena went too far, that perhaps she should have just filed a complaint and moved on. But Lena's decision to go public isn't without its consequences. The case quickly becomes a spectacle, publicly broadcast, analyzed, and debated in every corner of the country. As the media calls for answers, Lena's professional world begins to crack under the pressure. Threats come in from every direction. There are whispers of disciplinary action, the possibility of her being taken off cases, even the idea of losing her position altogether. But just as quickly as the backlash mounts, so does the support. A grassroots movement begins to take shape, with activists and community leaders rallying around Lena. Black women from all walks of life speak out, sharing their own stories of abuse and humiliation in courtrooms, boardrooms, and beyond. Social media is set ablaze with hashtags like #JusticeForLena and #HerFightIsOurFight, amplifying the voices of those who have long been ignored. These women, often pushed to the margins, are now uniting in a powerful display of solidarity. And in every tweet, every post, every comment, Lena finds herself supported, not by the system, but by the people she spent her life fighting for. This is bigger than Lena, a well-known activist leader says in an interview. This is about the system that has been built to oppress us, the black women who have been forgotten and silenced for far too long. The movement grows stronger by the day. Protesters fill the streets, demanding justice not just for Lena, but for every woman who has suffered because of the bias and brutality of the legal system. But even with the growing support, Lena can't help but feel conflicted. She's caught between the legacy of her father's advice and the raw urgency of the moment. She's torn between being the quiet, controlled figure who seeks change within the system and the loud, unapologetic voice calling for revolution from the outside. Her father's voice still rings in her ears. Don't make it bigger than it is. But the question keeps echoing in her mind. What if this is bigger than it seems? What if this moment, her moment, is the catalyst that sparks something much larger? A movement that could fundamentally change how Black women and all marginalized communities are treated by the system. And just as the support builds, so does the opposition. Lena soon finds herself on the receiving end of a full-scale legal and political attack. High-powered law firms, backed by deep pockets, start pressuring the courthouse to silence her. There are whispers of secret meetings, of backroom deals being made to discredit her. Anything to protect the status quo. Even within her own legal community, Lena faces increasing pushback from colleagues who fear the implications of her case. "You're putting the rest of us at risk," one colleague says during a private conversation. "If you continue with this, the whole system will come crashing down. Do you really want that?" Lena realizes that this fight is no longer just about her career or her personal journey. It's about a reckoning, a moment where everything she's fought for, her integrity, her career, her position as a judge, could be taken from her in an instant. But as she stares into the face of these threats, Lena realizes one thing: the stakes have never been higher. As the legal battle intensifies, Lena is not alone. More voices are rising to her defense. Legal experts, activists, and members of the community continue to rally around her. They understand that her fight is not just about one woman. It's about everyone who has ever been held down by an oppressive system that doesn't care about justice, only about maintaining control. Her father, seeing the overwhelming wave of support and the undeniable truth of what Lena is facing, begins to soften. Slowly, but surely, he starts to understand that this fight is not about him anymore. It's about the next generation. The generations who will look back at this moment and wonder if they were part of something that changed the world. And so, Lena Walker stands at the center of storm. The legal battle, the media circus, the growing protests, the personal attacks. Everything has led her to this moment. This is her legacy. The question remains, will it be one of compromise? Or will it be one of change? The moment the video of Lena Walker's head being shaved went viral, everything shifted. News outlets across the country picked up the story, and soon it wasn't just about a Black woman being humiliated in a courtroom. It was a symbol of a much larger problem, a deep-rooted issue of systemic racism and abuse of power that had been quietly festering for years. Protesters flooded the streets, their voices echoing in every corner of the nation, demanding justice for Lena. But as the crowds grew, so did the opposition. For every protester chanting for her, there were 10 voices calling for her removal, questioning her actions, and criticizing her decision to go public. The debates raged on. Was Lena a hero, or had she overstepped? Was she the victim of a broken system, or was she a product of her own making? The media frenzy spun out of control as the world watched with bated breath, and all the while, Lena's father, a respected figure in the legal community, found himself under increasing scrutiny. His past connections to powerful figures who had long been involved in the very system Lena was now fighting, came to light, and suddenly his reputation and career were hanging by a thread. As the pressure mounted, Lena's battle became not just hers, but the family's fight for survival within a system that had shown its ugly face in the harshest possible way. Every move she made, every step she took was scrutinized, while the system that once protected her family began to turn its back on them. In the background, her father, once her greatest supporter, sat in silence, watching the media coverage unfold with an unease that reflected the chaos swirling around them. The system was fighting back, and it wasn't just after Lena anymore. It was after everything they had built. The stakes had never been higher, and the future, once so clear, was now clouded in uncertainty, like a storm cloud waiting to burst. The tension was palpable, the nation's eyes trained on Lena, her father, and the battle for justice that was unfolding in real time. As the public outcry continues to swell and protests reach their peak, the investigation into Lena's case takes an unexpected turn. What once seemed like a clear-cut case of racist abuse an isolated incident in the courtroom, now begins to unravel in ways Lena never anticipated. The more the legal teams dig, the more shocking revelations come to light, each one more damning than the last, and all pointing toward a deeply ingrained system of bias and corruption that stretches far beyond the walls of that courthouse. It starts with the discovery of old body camera footage from Officer Clark's previous interactions with black individuals. These aren't isolated incidents, as Lena initially believed. No, these videos tell a much darker story. They show the same cop in a series of disturbing encounters, using excessive force, making racially charged remarks, and treating every black person he encounters with disdain, suspicion, and an alarming sense of superiority. The videos begin to pile up, each one offering another piece of the puzzle, further proving that Lena wasn't just the victim of one officer's outburst, but part of a much larger pattern of abuse, a system of racism embedded so deeply within the structure of law enforcement that it's difficult to imagine it ever being eradicated. These revelations bring the national spotlight onto Lena even harder, and as the world watches, a new wave of anger rises, not just against Officer Clark, but against the entire system that allowed him to operate with impunity for so long. But just when Lena thinks she might finally have the upper hand, the investigation uncovers a twist she never saw coming. The footage, while damning, reveals something Lena wasn't prepared to face: her father's involvement. The man who had always been her rock, the one who had fought so hard to build his career, the one who had taught her everything she knew about law, had for years been connected to those very people responsible for protecting officers like Clark. Lena's father had known about the cop's history of abuse, and worse, he had helped cover it up. The realization strikes her like a punch to the gut. Her father, the man who had spent his life advising her to play by the rules, to rise above the system, had quietly been a part of the very system that had oppressed her and so many others. The connection between them, once so unbreakable, begins to fray, each new revelation pulling them further apart. Lena can no longer trust the man she once saw as the ultimate symbol of justice. The foundation beneath her feet begins to shake as she wonders how much of her fight for justice has been tainted by her own father's choices. How much has he, with all his legal influence, allowed corruption to continue unchecked? As Lena confronts the truth about her father's involvement, the case becomes even murkier. Just when it seemed like she was about to prevail, the stakes rise once again. The legal system, so familiar and yet so foreign to her now, suddenly seems like an impenetrable maze. Her father's betrayal, combined with the mountain of evidence against Clark, puts her in a position she never expected. And just when she begins to hope that justice will finally be served, a final, shocking revelation pushes everything into doubt. A key piece of evidence, a damning phone call recorded from an unknown source, emerges that suggests Lena's father may have actively interfered with the case's progression, attempting to bury the officer's history to protect his own interests. This call places everything Lena has worked for into question. Was her father's loyalty to her, or to the system that had protected him and people like Clark for so long? The ramifications of this new evidence are immediate and overwhelming. Lena's case, which had felt so close to victory, is now clouded in uncertainty. Every piece of her fight for justice, every moment of pride, feels like it's slipping away. The camera lingers on Lena's face, capturing the raw emotion, the pain, the betrayal, the uncertainty of what's to come. She now faces the harshest reality of all. Her fight is no longer just about standing up for herself, but about navigating the fractures in her own family, the system that has shaped her, and the very notion of justice she has spent her life trying to uphold. The weight of the new evidence presses down on her, and the question of whether she can continue this fight, whether she can trust herself or anyone around her, becomes the most pressing issue of all. What Lena thought would be her moment of triumph now feels like a sinking ship, and with every passing moment, the battle becomes less about right or wrong and more about survival. Her survival, her family's survival, and the survival of a flawed system that is unraveling at its seams. As the investigation deepens, Lena's resolve is tested like never before. Can she continue to fight for justice? Or will the weight of these revelations crush her? Will the truth ever come to light? Or will the system that has so long hidden its corruption swallow it whole? And the most unsettling question of all, can Lena still trust anyone, even her own father, in a world where loyalty and truth seem so easily manipulated? As Lena watches the final, damning footage play on the screen, her entire future hangs in the balance. Will she expose the truth at the cost of everything she holds dear, or will she retreat into the shadows, overwhelmed by the weight of betrayal and lies? The moment Lena steps into the courtroom, everything shifts. The crowd, once just spectators, now feels like a wave of uncertainty crashing against her. She's not just walking into a room of strangers. She's walking into the heart of the system that has for so long worked to keep people like her at the margins. This is the final battleground. Everything she's fought for, everything she's risked, all comes down to this moment. The courtroom is silent. Every eye is on her. The defense, the prosecution, the judge, even the spectators. Everyone waiting to see how she will handle what's about to unfold. There's no turning back. She knows the stakes. Lena has been in legal battles before, but none like this. None that meant so much, not just to her, but to every black woman who has been subjected to injustice. To every person who's ever had to fight for recognition in a world that consistently tries to erase them. As Lena walks to the witness stand, her legs steady but her heart pounding, she takes a moment to breathe. She knows the system has already tried to break her, but she won't let it. Not today. Not now. She has no choice but to face what's coming head on. The moment Lena sits down on the witness stand, the tension in the room ratchets up. The defense attorney, a seasoned legal shark, stands up, his eyes cold and calculating. He's here to do one thing: tear Lena down. He begins by questioning her every move, every decision that led to this moment. He's methodical, like a surgeon, dissecting her words, her actions, trying to find cracks in her story, any piece of doubt that could break her resolve. Miss Walker, the defense begins, his voice smooth but dripping with sarcasm. You claim to have been humiliated, to have been targeted. But let's be clear, you're not here today as a victim. You're here because you made this personal. You could have handled this professionally, but instead, you turned it into a spectacle. You didn't just allow yourself to be disrespected, you let it get under your skin. Now, we're supposed to believe you. Why? The words hang in the air like a sharp blow, and the courtroom holds its breath. Lena knows what's coming next. The defense is going to dig into her every vulnerability, every mistake, every moment of doubt she's ever had. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a personal one. Lena takes a deep breath, her hand gripping the edge of the witness stand. She knows that the defense is doing its job, attacking her credibility, trying to show that she's too emotional, too biased. But this is not just about a single incident. This is about a pattern, a system that has failed her and countless others. She can feel the weight of every single person who has fought this fight before her. The women who didn't have the voice, the strength, or the platform. They're all here with her today, in spirit. You want to know why I'm here? Lena's voice is calm, but there's an undeniable steel behind it now. I'm here because I've spent my entire life trying to fit into a system that wasn't built for me. I'm here because, for once, I'm not just going to sit quietly and let it happen again. The room is silent for a moment. Lena's words hang in the air, and for the first time, the defense attorney falters, his calculated approach slipping for just a fraction of a second. Lena is not the woman he thought she was. She is more. She has become the face of a battle much bigger than this courtroom. And just like that, the narrative begins to shift. But as Lena's testimony continues, it becomes clear that the system isn't just going to let her win. The defense brings in witness after witness, colleagues, legal experts, even members of the police department, each one trying to paint Lena as a loose cannon, someone who can't be trusted with power. They question her integrity, her motives, and even her career. They accuse her of making a mountain out of a molehill. They claim that Officer Clark's actions were a misunderstanding, a misstep, a moment of bad judgment, but not racism. They argue that what Lena experienced was an isolated incident, that the officer never intended to cause harm. But Lena knows better. Each witness that takes the stand feels like another attack on her truth, on her life. The air in the room grows thick with tension, but Lena refuses to back down. She knows that if she wavers, even for a moment, the system will continue to crush her. She stays strong. Her voice doesn't crack. Her resolve doesn't falter. The case seems to be dragging on, and Lena begins to feel the exhaustion weigh on her. It feels like everything she's fought for could slip away in an instant. The defense is relentless, the media's scrutiny never-ending. But just when it seems like she's losing ground, a surprise twist shifts the momentum. A new witness takes the stand, a former officer who worked alongside Clark in the same precinct. His testimony is a bombshell. He claims that he witnessed Officer Clark engage in similar behavior years ago, using his power to intimidate and humiliate black suspects during arrests. The room falls into stunned silence as the witness describes in vivid detail several instances where Clark's actions mirrored the behavior that Lena had described. This new testimony is the turning point the prosecution desperately needed. This wasn't an isolated incident. The witness says, his voice shaky but unwavering. This was Clark's way of doing things. I've seen it before. He used his badge to instill fear. He thought no one would ever challenge him. But Lena Walker did. And that's why we're here. The tension in the courtroom escalates. The defense's strategy, which once seemed bulletproof, now begins to unravel. Lena's case gains a powerful new layer of credibility. The cracks in the system are widening, and Lena can feel the shift in the air. She's no longer the lone voice against the tide. Now, she has witnesses, evidence, and, most importantly, the truth on her side. But just when it seems like Lena might have secured her victory, a devastating blow comes from an unexpected source. A critical piece of evidence, an audio recording from the day of the incident, emerges, showing Lena's father speaking privately with Officer Clark, advising him to keep quiet about past incidents. The recording reveals a conversation in which Lena's father seems to downplay Clark's actions, suggesting that the incident would be swept under the rug. The room goes cold as the revelation hits hard. Lena's father, once her unwavering ally, is now a key figure in the controversy. The connection between him and the system he spent his life working within becomes undeniable. Was he trying to protect his daughter? Or was he complicit in covering up the very system that oppressed her? The truth is now in question, and Lena finds herself facing an agonizing choice. Can she still trust her father? And how will this new evidence affect her case? The camera cuts to Lena's face. Her expression is unreadable, but the emotions behind her eyes are palpable. Betrayal, anger, a deep, gut-wrenching hurt. Her father, the man who taught her to fight, is now the one holding her back. The room is heavy with tension. The judge, having observed the unfolding drama, remains silent, but his eyes flicker between Lena, her father, and the defense. The weight of the revelation hangs in the air. The stakes have just been raised higher than anyone could have anticipated. As Lena takes a deep breath, preparing to face the fallout from this shocking twist, she knows one thing for certain. The battle isn't over. The system will not easily relinquish its grip. This isn't just about Officer Clark anymore. This is about the corruption that runs deep within the system, a system that has failed her and so many others, a system that will fight until its last breath to protect itself. And just when it seems like all hope is lost, the judge rises to deliver his ruling, the final piece in this dramatic courtroom showdown. What will the judge decide? Will Lena's fight for justice prevail? Or will the system crush her, along with everything she's worked for? The courtroom falls into a silence, so deep it feels as though the air itself is holding its breath. The courtroom was silent now. The cheers, the protests, the endless media cycles had all faded into distant echoes. The verdict was in, and Lena had won, at least in the legal sense. Officer Clark had been stripped of his badge, his actions condemned, and the public outcry had forced the system to finally take a long, hard look at its failure. On the surface, it looked like a victory. But as Lena walked out of that courtroom, the weight of the battle was still pressing down on her shoulders, heavier than ever before. "You did it, Lena," people had whispered, congratulating her for her courage, for standing up to a system that had worked so hard to keep her and so many others in their place. And for a brief moment, she felt proud. But as the adrenaline faded and the reality of the aftermath sank in, Lena was left with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Was this really justice? Or had she simply become another pawn in a game where the rules were rigged from the start? The camera follows Lena as she walks through the empty halls of the courthouse, her footsteps echoing in the silence. For the first time in a long while, she's not sure if she's walking towards something or away from it. The weight of the past few weeks, months even, finally hits Lena in full force. The sleepless nights, the constant media scrutiny, the pressure to perform, to succeed, to prove that she was worthy of her seat at the table. It all begins to take its toll. She thought she could handle it. She thought she could fight and win without losing herself. But that's not how it works. Not in a system like this. Not when every win is followed by 1,000 silent losses. As Lena sits in her office, her hands clasped tightly together, she reflects on everything she sacrificed. Her career, her relationship with her father, her sense of self. Every day she spent fighting for justice had been a day she had to give up a part of herself. The weight of all those choices now presses down on her, and the toll it's taken becomes clearer than ever. Lena's been called a hero, a symbol of resistance, but no one truly understands the price of that title. It's more than just the hours spent in court, the late nights reading legal briefs, the constant fear that every decision she made might tear apart her life. It's the quiet, unseen costs, the strain on her emotional well-being, the isolation, the exhaustion of constantly being on, always fighting, always explaining, always justifying. She had thought it would be worth it, that it would make her stronger. But now, with the case over, with the world moving on, she feels smaller than ever. But it isn't just the external pressure that's eating away at her. It's the strain within her own family. The rift between her and her father, once so firm, now feels like an insurmountable chasm. The man who had always been her rock, her mentor, has become a stranger in her eyes. The revelations about his role in the cover-up of Officer Clark's past have left deep scars on their relationship. The betrayal she feels is so palpable, so raw, that it's hard to look him in the eye anymore. Her father had been the one to teach her about the importance of family, of loyalty, and of fighting for what's right. He had instilled in her the belief that the system, while flawed, could be navigated and changed from within. But now she's questioning everything she was taught. Could she ever trust him again? Did he ever believe in her the way he said he did? Lena's phone rings, and she knows, without looking at the caller ID, that it's him. Her father, the man who once encouraged her to rise above the challenges she faced, now silent in his own shame. She answers, her voice cold. "Lena," he says, his voice tight, his words carefully chosen. "I want to talk. About everything." But Lena knows it's too late for apologies. The cracks in their relationship are too deep now. And even if they were able to repair it, the foundation would never be the same. And then there's the system. The very system Lena fought so hard to change. Despite her victory, despite the attention the case had garnered, she can't help but feel that the system has simply learned how to adapt. Officer Clark may have been punished, but what about the system that allowed him to operate unchecked for so long? What about the others who still walk the halls of power, hiding their own secrets, abusing their authority without consequence? Lena knows the answer. Nothing's changed. The system is still there, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again. Her victory didn't topple it. It just exposed a small crack. But the walls are still standing. And as she looks around her office, at the piles of case files and legal papers, she knows one thing for sure. The fight isn't over. It never will be. Lena wants to believe that this victory, this small glimmer of justice, will spark a change. She wants to believe that it will be the catalyst for something bigger, something that will bring true equality and justice for everyone. But deep down, She knows that the path forward is going to be harder, more complicated, and more painful than she ever imagined. The media circus continues to follow her every move. Headlines move from one story to the next, but Lena remains the subject of scrutiny, of debate, of endless dissection. She is both revered and vilified, depending on which side of the argument you stand on. And just like that, she's become the face of a movement that she never expected, a movement that is bigger than her, bigger than this one case, but which she can't escape. Each news cycle feels like a new battle. Each interview, each question, feels like an assault on her character. She's tired, so tired of explaining herself, of justifying her actions to a world that only sees what they want to see. But as the media moves on, the real cost of this battle begins to show itself in her personal life. Friends, colleagues, and family who had once been supportive now stand at a distance. Some perhaps out of fear, others because they simply don't understand why Lena didn't take a quieter path. Why didn't she just let it go? Why make it bigger than it needed to be? The isolation grows, but it's not just from the public. It's from her own self. How does she reconcile the woman she's become with the person she used to be? How does she look in a mirror and see anything but the woman who challenged the system, who exposed its flaws, and in doing so, lost everything? And so Lena faces the cold truth. The battle may have been won, but the war is far from over. The system isn't going to let her off the hook so easily. Even as the case fades from the headlines, the backlash continues to grow. There are whispers, threats, and whispers of her downfall. Friends turn into enemies. Allies turn into adversaries. And even those she trusted are now questioning her choices. Was it worth it? Was the sacrifice of her peace, her career, her family, worth the brief taste of victory? The questions linger, unanswered, as the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months. But amidst the chaos, amidst the weight of everything she's lost, Lena still holds on to one thing: the belief that her fight was not in vain. It might have cost her more than she ever imagined, but it has also opened the door for others to stand up. Lena's victory might be a small one, but it's a victory nonetheless. And while the system may have pushed back, it has also been exposed for what it truly is. And that, in itself, is a start. Lena doesn't know what the future holds. She doesn't know how much more she's willing to give. But she does know this: she's not backing down. Not now, not ever. The fight for justice, for real change, doesn't end with one case. It's a long, grueling battle. But for Lena, it's a battle worth fighting. Because for the first time in her life, she's not just fighting for herself. She's fighting for everyone who has ever been silenced, for everyone who has ever been ignored, for everyone who has ever been told that their voice doesn't matter. And so the question remains, was this truly justice? Or was it just the beginning of a much larger fight? One that Lena must continue to wage for the rest of her life. The system may have won the battle, but Lena has just begun the war. As Lena walks away from the courtroom, her future uncertain, she knows that the fight for justice isn't over. It's not just her fight, it's the fight of everyone who has ever felt silenced, oppressed, or erased. The battle she began will echo far beyond this moment. And it's not up to Lena alone to change the system. It's up to all of us. You see, Lena's story is just one of many. Across the world, people of color are fighting similar battles every single day. Some win, some lose, but the fight for justice never ends. If we stand by and do nothing, the system will remain unchanged. But if we speak out, if we push back, if we demand better, things can change. Lena's victory wasn't just about her. It was about sending a message that says we will no longer be silenced. A message that says we see the injustice and we will fight to expose it. Now it's your turn. The fight for justice doesn't stop with Lena. It's up to each of us to take action, to raise our voices, to stand in solidarity, to challenge the status quo and demand a system that truly serves everyone. If you believe in equality, if you believe in justice, take action now. Here's what you can do. Speak up when you see injustice happening, whether in your community or online. Silence is complicity. Support organizations working on the front lines to fight systemic racism. There's so many who need your help, financially, emotionally, and through volunteering. Educate yourself and others about the realities of racial injustice. Knowledge is power, and sharing that knowledge is the first step toward change. Get involved in local movements and protests that are fighting for equality and justice. Vote. Your voice matters. Fight for policies that address inequality and hold accountable those who perpetuate injustice. This is not just Lena's fight. This is our fight. If this story moved you, if you believe that change is possible, don't just watch and forget. Take action. Share this video with everyone you know. Spread the word. Let's make sure that Lena's fight and the fight of so many others is not in vain. Like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Tell us how you're taking action in your own life. We want to hear your story. Subscribe to stay informed about how we can continue to fight for justice together. Together, we could be the change we want to see.